Breaking the real meaning behind Princess Leonor's Constitution oath. 2 years later, she stood there, 18 years old, hand on the Constitution, the future of Spain watching in silence. But here's what no one tells you. That oath wasn't a celebration. It was a warning. And 2 years later, we're only just beginning to understand why. Everyone remembers the image. Princess Leonor, straight-backed, calm expression, military uniform pressed to perfection. The Congress of Deputies holding its breath. On October 31, 2023, Spain didn't just watch a ceremony. Spain watched a transformation. Because that moment, her Constitution oath, was supposed to be simple. A formality, a tradition, a rite of passage that every future monarch must complete. But something about Leonor's oath felt heavier, slower, more deliberate, and people sensed it immediately. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. She didn't smile. She didn't search the room for comfort. She didn't look like a teenager stepping into adulthood. She looked like someone stepping into history. And that raises the first question we didn't ask loudly enough at the time. What did that oath actually cost her? Because 2 years later, the answer is clearer, and far more emotional, than anyone expected. To understand the weight of Leonor's oath, you have to strip away the pageantry. Forget the gold frames. Forget the cameras. Forget the applause. At its core, a Constitution oath is not a promise of power. It is a surrender. By placing her hand on Spain's constitution, Leonor did 3 irreversible things. First, she accepted that her life would never fully belong to her again. Second, she bound herself not to a crown, but to a document that limits her power. And third, she publicly agreed that duty would come before desire. That last part is the one people underestimate. Because when Leonor swore loyalty to the Constitution, she wasn't just promising to serve Spain. She was promising to obey it, even if it breaks her heart one day. And that brings us to a quieter truth. That oath wasn't for the public. It was for her parents. King Felipe VI stood meters away from his daughter that day. Not just as a monarch, but as a father who understands exactly what that oath takes from you. Felipe took the same oath decades earlier. He knows the loneliness it creates. He knows the emotional discipline it demands. And he knows the moments it steals, silently. Queen Letizia watched Leonor with a different kind of tension. Because unlike Felipe, Letizia came from an ordinary life. She understands freedom, privacy, choice. And as Leonor spoke the words of the oath, Letizia wasn't watching a princess rise. She was watching a daughter step into a life she herself can never protect her from. 2 years later, royal insiders say that moment marked a shift inside the family. Conversations changed, expectations hardened, and Leonor's life accelerated overnight. Which leads to the next question. Why did everything happen so fast after the oath? Within months of the Constitution oath, Leonor entered one of the most demanding phases of her life. Military training. Not symbolic training, not ceremonial drills. Real, punishing, identity-shaping discipline. Army, Navy, Air Force. 3 branches, 3 years, 0 shortcuts. This wasn't tradition for tradition's sake. This was the oath in motion. Spain's constitution doesn't just define the monarch as a figurehead. It defines the monarch as commander-in-chief. And that role cannot be inherited casually. So Leonor's oath triggered something unstoppable. From palace halls to freezing barracks. From formal gowns to combat boots. From protected routines to total exposure. 2 years later, we now understand. The oath wasn't the end of her childhood. The oath was the starting gun. Publicly, Leonor has been flawless. Composed, disciplined, focused. Privately, the cost has been immense. Long separations from family, isolation among peers who must treat her as both equal and untouchable. The pressure of being watched even when she's supposed to disappear into training. And here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. The Constitution oath restricts her personal future. Marriage, public expression, political neutrality, personal opinion. Everything must align with the stability of Spain. 2 years later, analysts now believe the oath was not just about legitimacy. It was about containment. Containing risk. Containing emotion. Containing unpredictability, and Leonor accepted that, knowingly. Which leads to the most uncomfortable question of all. Did she have a choice? Technically, yes. Emotionally, no. Leonor was raised not to question the path, but to prepare for it. From childhood, her education was designed around one assumption. Spain comes first. The oath simply made that assumption public. And once spoken, it cannot be undone. 2 years later, Leonor's expressions are more controlled. Her silence is longer, her presence heavier, not because she is unhappy, but because she understands something most teenagers never have to face. Her life is symbolic. Every move teaches Spain what kind of queen she will be, and symbolism leaves no room for impulse. At the time, critics argued the oath was outdated, ceremonial, unnecessary, a relic. 2 years later, those critics are quieter. Because Spain has changed. Political tensions, generational divides, questions about monarchy itself. Leonor's oath now stands as a stabilizing anchor. A moment frozen in time that says, the future is prepared, the line is secure, the crown understands its limits. And that is precisely why the oath mattered so deeply. It wasn't about asserting authority. It was about reassuring a nation that power would remain restrained. Strip everything away, and one truth remains. Leonor was 18, still becoming herself, still forming identity, still discovering emotion, and yet she accepted a role that demands emotional restraint for life. 2 years later, that contrast is clearer than ever. When she laughs, it's brief. When she speaks, it's measured. When she appears, it's intentional. Not because she's cold, but because the oath taught her something early. Visibility is responsibility. Here's the final curiosity loop. The Constitution oath was not her last. One day, Leonor will swear another. As queen. And when that happens, historians will look back at 2023 differently. They will say, that was the moment she stopped being a symbol in waiting. That was the moment the crown began shaping her from the inside. 2 years later, we finally see it. The oath wasn't ceremonial. It was transformative. It didn't give Leonor power. It took something from her. And in doing so, it made her real. So when you look at that image again, hand on the Constitution, eyes forward, voice steady, remember this. You weren't watching a promise. You were watching a sacrifice. And Spain is still living inside its meaning. If you want, I can next deepen this into a royal psychology analysis. Rewrite it with more romance or family tension.